Muzzle loading loads for the Stevens Long Tom 12 gauge shotgun. William Hovey Smith, 2018. I'm the author of Extreme Muzzleloading, and here we investigate what might be called almost muzzleloaders. This is Hovey Smith, the backyard sportsman. My table here is getting more than a little crowded. What we're going to talk about today is converting the Stevens Long Tom here to use as a muzzleloader. The way all this started, I was working with the Dixie Petersolli Scout 12 gauge flintlock shotgun, now in this box. Here I am in an early morning hunt in my PJs for squirrels with the Dixie Scout shotgun. This is a 5.5 pound gun in 12 bore. Consequently, I loaded it last year with 78 grains of powder and a 1 ounce of shot load because of the very light weight of the gun. This year, I reduced it back to 70 grains with 1 ounce of shot and did manage to kill, with difficulty, a couple of squirrels with it. Some of the problems were mine because I used an inappropriate size shot, and ultimately we had a failure in the lock, and so it's being boxed up and sent back to Dixie. Now, about lightweight 12 bore guns of any sort. This gun weighed 5.5 pounds. That, in my opinion, is much too light for a 12 bore gun. You can see how the recoil from some of these loads is causing me to step back as I actually shoot them. This one is 6.5 pounds. Much better. And this one is 8.5 pounds. Better yet if you're going to shoot some serious loads with it. Now, what is a serious load if you're talking about a 12 gauge gun? Well, I consider a serious load on a 12 bore gun to start at about 85 grains up to about 120, depending on exactly what you're trying to do. 70 or 78 grains, that's very much on the light side. That's more like a 20 gauge. And I'm also talking about 1 1/8 to 1 1/4 ounces of shot. Now, when you're talking about round balls are lighter weight than a shot charge. So consequently, you go up to the upper end to 120 grains if you're going to shoot round ball. Now, one problem with this gun, among several, it has a very tightly choked bore. And I'm going to give you some help in that about how to choose a proper ball size for it. But this gun is split in the stock already quite badly here, and it's an old gun, it's a family heirloom. I don't want to damage it by overloading it. So I'm not going to do it. I thought about it. No, I'm just not going to risk the gun. But we are going to take Mortimer here out again and load it with patch round ball and 120 grain load, and I guarantee you that will kill deer every day. Now, I'm going to bring the camera up and show you some of the details about getting a load developed for your cartridge 12 gauge single barrel shotgun. And so we're now considering, okay, loads. We fired a couple of shots, and what we discovered is, surprisingly, that our 70 grain load that we developed for the Dixie is about as much recoil as I want to take out of this gun. This load I'm shooting is 1 1/8 ounce load out of the cartridge. At 6.5 pounds, it is a pound heavier than the Dixie, but still, yeah, this thing bumps you pretty good. So I don't want to go any more than that at an ounce of shot. Now it is lethal at close range, so we have killed squirrels with it, so we know that works. Now concerning round ball use in 12-bore guns, I've run through this before, and one of the nice things about being a gun writer is that you write your stuff down. So I went back and saw what I'd done a decade or more ago, the last time I was doing a lot of shooting with round balls. And at that time I accumulated a lot of different sizes of round balls, as you see here on the table. And obviously some are just too big. Boom. Now there is a way. You can take 2 steel plates and you can roll it to reduce the diameter if your ball is just slightly larger, and get it down to where you could load a bare ball down the choke. And it would more or less line up, maybe getting out again. Well, I'd rather not do that. Now we found, not unsurprisingly, that the bag where we had fewer balls left contained some things that would really work. When we have cylinder bored guns, we could take this wad and we could take a ball, .650, put it inside the wad, and then shoot this with reasonable accuracy from a cylinder bored gun. This is a left and right at 30 yards, shot on safari in Africa with a David Petersali slug shotgun. So we have a larger diameter ball, which is .720 in diameter, and it will fit in the muzzle and allow room for a patch. Okay, now this I can load. So this is the ball size that we're going to use, and we'll load it as a patch round ball. Okay? So that decision has been made. I don't have many balls left. I've used this combination before in several other guns. We come to the problem now at what velocities are we launching these projectiles and how effective are they? I previously found that when you launch with that little powder, with 70 grains of powder, you're not generating terribly high velocity in that round ball out of a 12-bore gun. Yes, it will kill smallish deer, but typically the deer don't show any signs of being hit, and you just blow a 75 caliber ball through the deer, and it does expire, but the ball has no expansion at those lower velocities. What you're probably running at is about 800 feet per second or 700, something in that neck of the woods. If you really want an effective round ball load, you need to get up to somewhere between 100 and 120 grains. At 120 grains, you do get expansion. Yeah. This thing will almost double in diameter on impact. So that's an effective load for a big game. And this blue wildebeest, which is far larger than a U.S. whitetail, was killed with a gun. But I don't want to put that much stress on this old gun. So I'm going to use the round ball load out of the Mortimer flintlock rather than this one. Okay, so we're going to develop and continue with our 70 grains and our number 6 shot right here and see how we do. Now we have solved one problem having to do with getting wads that would fit through this choked bore and still expand at the end. There are 2 ways to go. This is a fairly stiff felt 12 gauge Wonder Wad. So it'll compress when it goes through the choke a little bit and then re-expand. Now as an expedient, I've also taken some egg crate material and cut some 12 gauge wads out of it. They're irregular, they have points on them, and all of that's fine. There's no sweat there, just so long as they're seated down the bore. Now so far as the seating goes, we also have a long ramrod now put together, and this is 12 gauge in diameter, so it seats the full face of the wad, so it pushes it down. If you try to seat it with a smaller tip like this, the wads will tend to kick like that and then go in sideways and not seat well. So this ensures that you do get a good flat seat on the top of your shot. So both of these are appropriate advances in the art so far as this particular gun goes. Although I'm not actually going to use round ball loads in this gun because of its inability to take more than a small charge of powder, I am going to show you how you load one of these balls down a choked barrel. And a lubricated patch. The patch is lubricated with bore butter, and this is a hard canvas drop cloth material. And it's been previously lubricated. So you seat your ball in the bore, sprue side up. Now because the patch is compressible and it takes up space, you use the mallet here. Okay, that has seated it down below the maximum restriction of the choke. Then you take a good knife and you cut off the end of the patch to leave it square. Beneath this, I would have already loaded, of course, the cut-off cartridge case that contains the powder charge. I would have dropped my load of powder, which would be between 100 and 120 grains, depending on the weight of the gun. I would have loaded a hard card over the shot with 1/4 inch card and a fiber wad, which is a 1/2 inch fiber wad, 12 gauge, and I would often load about 30 grains of cream of wheat to give a little cushion underneath this charge and give it a little added seal as it comes up the bore. Okay, now that I've got it past the choke, you can take our ramrod, which now, as you see, has a 12 gauge end as well as a 50 caliber end, and run it down the bore very easily. And you crimp it down onto the rest of your load. I would also add one of my cut styrofoam wads on top of that ball. When it shoots, it will go through the larger part of the chamber, be restricted as it goes in the barrel, and be more restricted yet as it goes out the choke. But by shooting, you'll be able to actually zero your gun to the ball load. So just like any other gun that you ever shoot at a piece of game, you need to find that out. Where does the ball shoot? Now this gun does have a little groove here. So this is in effect your rear sight, and then you use your bead for your front. And you can do pretty reasonable work with this sort of stuff. Certainly good enough to plunk a deer at 20 or 30 yards with great certainty. So these guns will shoot better than you might think. And if you use between 100 and 120 grains of powder, they will kill well. If you start piddling around with 60 or 70 grains of powder, not so much. Edward Teach Blackbeard, the British shot him 7 times with their pistols, which were 75 caliber Tower pistols, to kill him. Their puny loads, even though the ball was big, weren't big enough to go through that huge fellow and bring him down for good. So that is how you load the ball in these choke guns. But now this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe. Goodbye, God bless, and see you next time. Besides, in my book, Extreme Muzzleloading, where I describe several of my muzzleloading hunts with smoothbore guns, I do also have a section about them in Shooting and Maintaining Your Muzzleloader, one of my ebooks, and then a book exclusively about hunting with muzzleloading shotguns and smoothbore muskets. My newest book is a business book, Create Your Own Job Security. In this book, I advocate that people start several businesses whilst they are still working throughout their lives, so that if they suddenly get a layoff notice, they already have their own business quietly running in the background, and all they have to do is rev it up. And this book goes through all of the details on how to do exactly that. My usual way of increasing the weight of the gun is to add melted beeswax and lead shot into the hollow cavities of the buttstock. For more information, my books, blogs, and more than 700 videos, you can go to my website, www.hoveysmith.com. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye, and God bless.